Bharat Jodo Yatra, March to Unite India, is viewed as a turning point in your political career, at least after 2014. When you look back upon the 3 to 4 months when you walked 3,000 miles, about 15 miles a day, trying to reach out, trying to embrace, when you look back upon that experience, what stands out for you?
I mean, many things stand out. I learned many things that I could not even, they were outside my imagination. I learned how to listen to people properly. I learned that you could connect with people instantly in ways that I had never imagined possible. And it was a huge learning experience to see what the different conceptions, ideas in India, the different people, I mean, what they're doing, it's mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. And the dignity of the whole thing, I mean, I've never seen anything like that. That you're struggling, you're hurting, you're trapped completely, and you don't lose your dignity. Not for 1 second will you lose your dignity. And then you see people who have everything, no shortage of anything, and no dignity. So it's a fascinating thing to me. And I realized, which is something that I just hadn't figured out before. And I realized that for some reason, from say 2004, when I entered politics, I did not find love to be a useful word in politics. And it was something that I didn't use, I didn't say, oh, I love my family, I love my mother, I love my sister, I love my friends. But it never entered my political thinking. And suddenly I realized that, what is this? Why has it never entered my political thinking? Right? Why can't I express love for a person that I have never met? And so that happened in the Yatra. And it had a shocking impact. I was just blown away. Because suddenly it allowed me to use the most powerful tool in politics, which I just, for some reason, and I don't understand why nobody else uses it. It's not, I don't know. I just don't understand it. I was like, wow, this thing works. It's crazy. I can actually meet a complete stranger and say, I love you. And he says, I love you. And the conversation starts at a completely different place. He's not talking anymore about, oh, I'm having trouble with my farm. It's like a totally different connection. So I learned that. I learned a little bit of perseverance that, carry on, doesn't matter. But to me, that was the most powerful thing, that you can suddenly use this idea of love for somebody to and connect directly with them. Like I have now before the Yatra, I never heard anybody saying to me, I love you. Now, no, serious. I walk out and I'm in Delhi, some scooter wala will, look at me and say, love you. Right? And it's so much nicer. It's so much more pleasant, and it solves so many problems. Like half the problems are gone when the guy starts off with a frame that, okay, I love you, and yeah, I love you too, now let's talk. You're in a different elevated space. It sounds funny, but no, it's powerful.
No. I mean, Gandhi has quite a few things to say about this, but can you tell this audience how one of the greatest slogans of that march from the south to the north, 3,000 miles, those who don't know, 3,000 miles plus in a matter of 4 months, 15 miles a day, how the slogan of Nafrat ke bazaar mein mohabbat ki dukaan, in the marketplace of hatred, you are creating a shop of love. How did this come about? Can you tell this audience?
It doesn't quite work in English the way it does in Hindi.
I know.
Right?
How do you have a better translation?
No.
Yeah, okay.
But for my friends who speak English, it doesn't have quite the kick it does in Hindi.
Yeah. I agree, but no? I couldn't figure out another way to translate it.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
Yeah. So in the marketplace of hatred, you're creating a shop of love is the best I can do. And I'm sure poets here can do much better.
Yeah.
Tell us how the slogan emerged.
See, when I first started, to me, I was meeting people. And so somebody would come, hello, how are you? Individual connection. And then they'd tell me, this is what I'm thinking. And first I would talk to them. So I'd be like, okay, this is what you're thinking, this is what I think. After some time, I couldn't talk anymore because it was overload. So there were too many people coming, and then for me to just speak became a bit difficult. So I started to go silent slightly more. And then I started to realize that actually there are individual voices there in that yatra, but then the yatra also speaks as a group, as a system, right? And every now and then, suddenly the yatra as a whole would suddenly speak, and it would tell you something, and it would of course come through somebody, through an individual, but it was obvious that it was an expression that was beyond that individual. And this is one of those examples. So we were walking, and this gentleman there was a huge crowd and pushing and pulling, and there was this gentleman on that side, and I could see that he was trying to come in, and there were the cops there. They're quite aggressive, so they were pushing people aside, and they pushed him. So I could see him trying to come in, and then he disappeared. And after a few hours again, I saw him, but on this side, and again he was trying, and then he disappeared. And then again he came, and I was like, okay, I better now try and get this guy into this thing. So I told Alankar, who works with me, I said, bhai, usko pakad ke lao. No, literally, because you have to literally catch. Otherwise, you can't catch. If you don't catch and bring, the crowd will just sweep him off. So he physically pulled the guy through the
Crowd.
Through the police and through the crowd. And then the guy came, and he came running in front of me, and then he pointed both his hands at me like that. And he says, I know what you're doing. So I was like, what am I doing? So he said, कि आप नफरत के बाजार में मोहब्बत की दुकान खोल रहे हो. So it was an expression not of one person. It was an expression that was much deeper in the crowd, and this one person transmitted it. And then it just went like electricity. Because then when I said it in a speech, it was clear that actually it was embedded in everybody. And this guy had just pulled it out of the crowd. So that was the story.
That's the origin of one of the most famous slogans of...
And people ask me, how did you think this up? I'm like, well, I didn't think it up.
It came from the
crowd. It came from the
people.
And most ideas actually in our work, if you're serious and you're not arrogant, most ideas come like that. Most ideas come from somebody. And I think, so the skill is actually to look and listen for these ideas that India is throwing at you.
Is there a North-South division in Indian politics? Has it been deepening of late? If yes, what can be done to bridge the divide?
See, our constitution is the mechanism through which Indian states talk to each other. Our institutions are the mechanism through which they talk. And if our institutions and our constitution is weakened, states will struggle to talk to each other. So it's not just a North-South divide. Manipur has civil war, right? If you want to take it further, I went to Manipur, and I'll tell you a story. Never happened to me in my life before. We arrived in Manipur. We were going to see one group of people, and the fellows from there said to us, listen, if you're going to come in, we're very happy that you've come. We've invited you. But in your security detail, if there is anyone from that other group, we will shoot them. And so we had to take the people out of my security detail who were from that community. And then we went to this community. And then when we went from this community back to the other community, that other community said to us, hey, if there's anybody in your security detail from that community, please remove them, otherwise we'll shoot them. So, that's not an Indian state. That is some new hybrid that has emerged, where literally communities are at war. And they call it a war there. They call it a war. So there is a North-South divide, there is a rich-poor divide, there is the Northeast which is feeling pressurized. And the answer is democracy, deepening of democracy, protection of constitution, and allowing multiple voices to speak. And there's no problem, because when you allow multiple voices to speak, you release the pressure massively.
Let's turn to economic policy now. And then I'll have a question on national security and foreign policy later. We have 10 minutes left for this section. In several circles, it is argued that you are not fond of market-based economic policies and are only concerned with the welfare of the poor and the disadvantaged. Your party, however, was responsible for embracing market-oriented policies in the early 1990s called liberalization, which increased India's economic growth rate, created a huge middle class, and brought India worldwide economic and business attention. What is your view of markets? Are they necessary for India's forward economic march? Can we achieve higher social welfare, about which you've talked so much, without market-oriented economic growth?
I mean, they're absolutely necessary. I'm certainly not against markets. I'm against monopolization. Okay? And I'm against monopolization anywhere. My argument about the economic strategy of the BJP is essentially that you're giving way too much to few people, right? Again, I have the numbers here. 1% of our population owns 40% of our wealth. You simply are not going to develop the country like that. Right? So I'm not against markets at all. I'm against unfair competition. I'm against capture of economic systems. And that's exactly the argument I'm making on caste. I'm of the view that a small section of society should not control the entire ecosystem, whether it's in caste or whether it's in economics, right? And I think that's detrimental to the future of our country.
So markets and welfare can go together.
They have to go together. You can't have welfare without markets.
Okay.
Right? And then
it's very good to hear that, because that's not what a lot of economists that I talk to, they don't think that you're thinking about. They don't think that you're worried about.
But a lot of people know what I think better than myself. This is a phenomena that people seem to understand what I think better than what I think.
Okay.
And there are many commentators who tend to do that. I'm very clear. The single biggest challenge in front of India today is to create a production system to compete with the Chinese, is manufacturing and the creation of jobs. India is not going to be able to do that without a market, without a liberalized economic system, right? And anybody who talks about social progress, weakening caste structures, also has to accept that you need money to do that. And the only way you're going to make money is by having a production system and by having an open, liberalized economy.
How should India respond to Donald Trump's tariff policy?
I mean, look,
and is it responding the right way?
We don't know how it's responding because they don't tell us these things. Donald Trump is negotiating. He's well within his rights to negotiate. We should negotiate right back. We should understand what our strengths are, what we need, and we shouldn't compromise in areas that are detrimental to us. But he's well within his rights to say that he wants, to change the tariff structure, and it's a negotiation. Fine. I think we're more than capable enough to negotiate ourselves a decent deal.
Turning to foreign policy and national security now, what are India's biggest security challenges? Does Pakistan present the biggest security challenge, or China?
I would say now China and Pakistan are fused.
Are fused?
Yeah, they're the same. So it's the same security challenge because they are aligned together. So any conflict we have will probably involve both of them together. But the challenge that I was pointing out, the fact that we don't have a production system, we are failing in manufacturing, and we have a massive unemployment crisis. This to me plays into the external threat. So if you have a sound democratic structure, if you have institutions that are working, and you have a production system that's effective, producing jobs, I don't think external forces can be much of a threat. But if you're weak internally, if you're not producing jobs for your people, then the game changes.
What, in your view, should be India's position on Ukraine and Israeli-Palestinian war? Two things.
I would say on Ukraine, By and large, I would be similar to what the Prime Minister is saying. We wouldn't be very different. On Palestine, I think what happened October the 7th was terrible, but what the Israeli state is doing in Gaza is reprehensible. And just, there's no other way to say it. Just murdering innocent children, innocent civilians, that's not the way to solve these problems.
And on Ukraine, you think what India has done is basically right?
We would be similar. Look, we don't like the idea of war. We don't like the fact that young Ukrainian men, young Russian men are dying. We would probably be in a similar policy position as the BJP government on that.
As the current government. Yeah. One final question before we open up. India-US relations have improved a lot since the end of the Cold War. Would you like to see some changes in how India deals with the United States?
China has shown the world how you can manufacture and produce in a non-democratic environment. And the United States and India essentially need to show the world how you can produce effectively in a democratic environment. We don't like the Chinese system of production. We don't like the Chinese system of government. We don't like the authoritarian nature of it. But we have to concede that as far as production goes, they've been successful. And I think huge part of the partnership between India and the United States should focus on this area. I mean, President Trump is already speaking along these lines in terms of manufacturing in the United States. I think he'll struggle to get all types of manufacturing into the United States. He might be able to get the high-end manufacturing into the United States. But I think a partnership between India and the United States on manufacturing and developing a strategy for manufacturing in a democratic environment is something that would be very powerful. Today, our conversation is more transactional. There's a defense element, there's a strategic element with it between us, which is fine. That has to remain. But I would add this. I would say, okay, how does India, with its scale and its know-how, partner with the United States to build an alternative, a serious alternative to the Chinese manufacturing system?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.